Please put your hands together and welcome to the stage the inimitable Cal Wilson!
How are you all? Who here feels guilty about stuff? Does anyone else feel guilty? I feel guilty about everything because we're surrounded by guilt all the time. Like every day, you know, we feel guilty about what we eat. We're supposed to feel guilty about what we wear, how much time we spend with our families. You sit down to watch a DVD and you get confronted with that anti-piracy thing. You wouldn't steal a car. Well, do you know what? If I could do it from my living room with a couple of clicks, I just fucking might. Click, click, Tirana. Brilliant. My very first memory is a guilty one. I was 4 years old and I was at a place called Willowbank Wildlife Reserve in Christchurch. Now, has anyone ever been to Willowbank? Yes. Oh my God, it's like finding out that someone else has been to Narnia. That's amazing. That's amazing. So I was there with my brothers, they were 6 and 10, and they were feeding a Canadian goose. So if you don't know what a Canadian goose is, it's like a normal goose, but it's politer. No, it's not, in fact. It's just as aggressive and hostile as any other goose. But it's brown and it's got a black head, so it's like a goose in a balaclava. And my brothers were feeding this goose. And when I say they were feeding it, what they were doing was that they were showing it the food and then they were taking it away. And they were showing it the food and then they were taking it away. I imagine it's how you feed a supermodel. After a while, the goose, already a hostile creature, has just had enough of the Naomi diet and it loses its mind and it turns around and attacks a stranger. A completely innocent woman walking past, it just turns around and bites her on the ass. And she screams and runs off down the path and then the goose chases her. So it's running down the path, honking and biting and honking and biting and honking and biting. It was like being in live-action feathery Pac-Man. And I was mortified. I was going to my brothers, we have to tell Mum, we have to tell Mum. And they're like, why would we tell Mum? And I was like, in case the police find a dead woman with no ass. I was convinced we were responsible for her death. And I was also convinced that the goose would remember us. And that we would therefore never be able to come back to Willowbank ever again. And I was quite devastated by that because it was one of my favourite places in the universe. It was a wildlife reserve in that the wildlife that it contained were geese, and some sheep, and there was a goat, and a hen, and some ducks, and a cow, and monkeys, and a mountain lion. Because that is an animal subset that you find in the wild, isn't it? Farm animals, lion. But the best thing about it was, one of the monkeys only had one arm, because the monkey's cage was right next to the mountain lion's cage. And one morning, Sundance, the most curious of the monkeys, had stuck his little arm through the bars and the mountain lion had bitten it off. Now, I actually think that's fair enough, because if you stick a kebab through my car window, I will eat it. But that strikes me as being a very Kiwi attitude to safety, doesn't it? Put the monkeys next to the mountain lion, let them figure it out. And I could just imagine the zookeeper coming in the next morning after it had happened going, oh, well, he won't do that again. I suppose he could give it one more go. But I was reminiscing with my brothers about this over Christmas, and I was saying, do you remember Sundance, the one-armed monkey, the little monkey stump? Do you remember that? Do you remember that? And they were like, no, we have no recollection of that. I think you've made it up. And I was like, I can't have made it up. I've told too many people. And then I started to think about it, and I went, well, it's quite ludicrous that you put monkeys next to a mountain lion. Maybe I did just invent the whole thing when I was little. And so I emailed Willowbank, and I said, I might be making this up, but in the 70s, did you have a one-armed monkey because the mountain lion had bitten its arm off? And I got an email back, and it just said, Dear Cal, what a trip down memory lane.